You're listening to the Retro Mo Podcast. I'm your host, Mo, and I love to play and review old video games and a few new games too. If you prefer to read instead of listen, check out my written reviews at retromo.substack.com. In this episode, I'll be sharing my experience with Fallout 4 for the PC, released in 2015. I've scored this game 9 out of 10. An amazing game. The best Fallout experience yet, warts and all. Wow. I finally finished Fallout 4. 220 hours later. That is the most time I've ever invested into a single playthrough of any game. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. If anything, that number alone should serve as a strong indicator of how much of a Mo game Fallout 4 is. I'm still digesting what I experienced and trying to discern whether recency bias is at play. But for the moment, it seems that Fallout 4 has dethroned Oblivion as my favorite game of all time. I apologize in advance for the length of this review, but the short version is, there's lots of bugs, but Mo still really enjoyed Fallout 4. The incredible story content is this game's greatest strength. I've always enjoyed the writing in Bethesda Studios games, but Fallout 4 has reached another level. Fallout 3's very black and white, good guy or bad guy player choices suited me just fine, since I almost always opt for lawful good, or at least neutral good role-playing. I struggled a bit with New Vegas's swath of moral grays, though most other players seem to find this complexity much more interesting than Fallout 3. Fallout 4 clearly takes cues from New Vegas by adding so much more complexity and player choice than Fallout 3, yet they pave a more agreeable path for players who want to still be the hero. One valid criticism is that Fallout 4 seems to be lacking in meaningful evil player choices outside of the Nuka World quest lines. And yet, even though there does seem to be a clear good guy path, there's still a touch of that New Vegas getting your hands dirty compromise required. Rarely are the major storylines neatly concluded without some measure of sacrifice for the greater good. I will say, the impressively complex spaghetti ball of player choices at the end of the main quest is very well crafted. There's plenty of replayability for those who want to side with a different faction in another playthrough. The game often faces you with difficult choices, sometimes very emotionally raw, with plenty of twists along the way. One twist in particular towards the end had me reeling. It seems impossible for any sci-fi writing today to avoid tropes, but I did find Fallout 4's take on the familiar sci-fi concepts to be well executed at least. I was completely enthralled in the themes, questions, and ethics surrounding memory, advanced technology, and the essence of humanity. I loved exploring the Nuka World DLC, which may be the closest thing we'll ever have to experiencing a post-apocalyptic Disney World. And Far Harbor may be the best Bethesda DLC I've played yet, even outshining Shivering Isles, in my opinion. Talk about getting your hands dirty. There are some tough choices in that storyline. I just devoured this game. I played through every single available quest, aside from the never-ending procedurally generated Radiant quests. There's a few fetch quests, this is an RPG after all, but nearly all of the quests carried some sort of interesting storyline or a new character with unique dialogue. I love good lore, so I gobbled up every scrap of lore I found left behind on terminals, holotapes, and on handwritten notes. I often found myself chuckling at the cheeky humor periodically injected into this very bleak post-apocalyptic world. The Vault Boy retro-futuristic vibes continue to be a strength for the series, with the fantastic animated special video intros being a particular treat. I have mixed feelings about the visuals. It's the best-looking Fallout game yet, but the graphics are certainly not on par with some of the best that 2015 games had to offer, like Until Dawn or Arkham Knight. Those games looked amazing. So, in Fallout 4, the textures seem to be wanting in that regard, but the well-designed characters, creatures, and environments still pull the game along. They've really pumped up the violence and gore in Fallout 4, which may be a boon for some. Gore is not really my thing. Thankfully, there's a mod for that. If anything, absurdly unrealistic gore inhibits the game's immersion, and immersion is normally a strength for Bethesda Studios games. Raiders exploding into multiple pieces like some kind of a Lego figure from just one crit 45 round, it pulls me out of the suspension of disbelief more than your typical game logic issues. To each their own, I guess. The gameplay loop takes the best from Fallout 3 and adds even more. You've got the standard questing, lockpicking, terminal hacking, shooting, and looting gameplay. Gunplay is much improved from Fallout 3, though the changes they made to the dialogue system were rightfully panned. I don't know what they were thinking. Again, thankfully, there's a mod for that. The enemy AI is much improved, and there were times I found myself going without VATS just for the fun of it, even though it's not as ammo efficient. The crafting system isn't perfect, but I did enjoy modding my guns and my power armor. I didn't really fuss much with the light armor workstation, or chem crafting, or cooking, but those are options too. With DLC, you can also make custom robots. You can fill an entire settlement with robots if you want. Crafting makes it so that anything and everything you find in the wastes is useful, since you need raw material to create. So I found myself hoarding lamps, hot plates, and telephones just for the copper needed to repair my fully upgraded power armor. The power armor jetpack is a must-have. You have to get that upgrade. It is so fun dropping in on groups of enemies with the jetpack. It also saves you time because you can take shortcuts up onto buildings or over fences. Hoarding caps and materials is necessary and fun for the first 50 hours or so, but by the mid to late game, depending on how much of a completionist you are, I had such a huge stack of caps, ammo, fusion cores, and raw materials that looting began to feel meaningless. This may just be a key drawback of this game's massive size. There's just so much content. I'm not sure how they could better balance the game. Do they balance the game for players that only want to put in 20 to 30 hours, or do they balance the game for those who commit to the 200-hour experience like me? There's no enemy scaling, which I think is a good move. The further south you go on the map, the higher the level of the enemies. However, by the late game, with fully modded unique weapons and power armor and loads of powerful perks, I was just one-shotting most enemies and two-shotting everything else. I barely took any damage from enemies except for the crazy face laser from the legendary Assaultrons. Maybe this is the dream for RPG gamers, but I became so strong that the game ceased to be challenging. I guess I shouldn't complain about that. I do think the power armor is too strong. In this game, power armor now requires, quote, rare and expensive fusion cores to operate, but by the end of the game, I consistently had over 60 fusion cores in my inventory. I really enjoyed the settlement building, though I found it very finicky and difficult to learn at first, the custom builder. There's hardly any in-game help or documentation, but thankfully YouTube has plenty of tutorials, and there are some mods that can ease the process. I really enjoyed decking out Sanctuary, my main home base. I had fun playing with lighting. I think string lights look amazing at night. And I created a retirement home at the Kingsport Lighthouse for my character. Critics of Fallout 4 often cite settlement babysitting as a major annoyance, and I get that. Players get bombarded with radiant settlement quests, some of which fail after a set amount of in-game time. That's just bad game design. Settlements that you build will often get attacked and require defending. You have to fast travel and defend within 24 in-game hours, or your crops, turrets, and even some items in your workbench will be at risk. Very unhappy settlements may even turn against you and attack your other settlements. I think this distracts from the core gameplay. It's not uncommon to be knee-deep in a story-rich main quest and see 10 Pines Bluffs is under attack by raiders pop up on your screen. You feel guilty or stressed if you ignore this, but thankfully, once again, there's a mod for that. This game would be a mess without the modding community. Out of all of the Bethesda Studios RPGs I've played, Fallout 4 has definitely been the buggiest. Even with essential mods like the unofficial patch and the script extender, I encountered so much Bethesda jank. I had some atrocious load times, sometimes up to 4 minutes long. I timed it. But I think that may have been due to my script extender mod not loading correctly. I'm not sure what was going on there. Within my 220-hour playthrough, the game hard crashed on me 5 times, most often in DLC areas. It's a good thing I'm a seasoned Bethesda gamer because I made hard saves often. Most of the quests were just fine, but I did encounter 2 completely broken DLC quests that required some console trickery to complete. I encountered a legendary fog crawler that just wouldn't die. The health bar just kept refreshing over and over. I had to use the console to disable it and make it disappear so it wouldn't wreck my settlement. I once got stuck in a ceiling and couldn't get out. I had to load from a save. I got stuck in an elevator, the infamous infinite elevator glitch, and hilariously, in that exact moment, my companion, Piper, said, "These things feel too much like tombs for my liking." Had a laugh at that, of course. I had to load from a previous save, and then the elevator worked fine. It's a bit silly when you access a workstation with several companions nearby, because all of them spit some kind of dialogue at you all at the same time. That really kills the immersion. I sent most of my extra companions to Sanctuary, so this was a common occurrence. At times, the companion pathing was laughably bad. I once had to physically push MacCready towards a quest objective with my character because he got stuck on nothing. He just wouldn't move. Once, Piper got stuck repeating the same line over and over again until I left the area. Occasionally, I would get lost when a quest marker was placed incorrectly. But the absolute worst offender among all of this Bethesda jank was the night that all of my save files disappeared. And this was after 170 hours of gameplay. The folder where they should have been was completely empty. I didn't update or change anything. They just vanished. I nearly gave up on the game. Turns out it was some weird glitch with Steam Cloud Save, which the community had warned me to disable from the beginning, and I did disable that option. But thankfully I was able to find my saves buried deep in the Steam user data folder. They just got moved somehow, very strange. So if this happens to you, do a full Windows search for .fos files. Those are your save files. Hopefully you can find them. I started making duplicates of my most recent save files on my desktop, just in case. So, is this a lot of bugs to experience within 220 hours of gameplay? Yes, I'd say yes. Even though this game is a behemoth with seemingly endless content, I'm not going to defend Bethesda. Many gamers have expressed understandable frustration about the sloppy code. Even after these many years of free labor from the modding community, Fallout 4 can still be a very janky experience. Maybe it's time for Bethesda to leave their creation engine behind and switch to something more stable like Unreal Engine 5. When the Bethesda formula actually works, it's great. Most of my time in the Commonwealth was rich and rewarding. When the formula doesn't work, it's what we've come to expect from Bethesda. The bugs disrupt the immersion that normally makes these games so engaging. Let me end this review on a high note. The original soundtrack from Einon Zur is absolutely stunning. The Elder Scrolls series is famous for its soaring atmospheric themes, but the Fallout series was historically known more for the 40s and 50s radio station classics. Also, Zur's Fallout 3 and New Vegas soundtracks didn't really offer much outside of the dissonant horror tracks. But for Fallout 4, Zur spreads his wings and gets to show off some of the most hauntingly beautiful ambient music I've heard in a long time. I love this score, and I listen to it all the time on Spotify. There are also plenty of epic battle tracks, and Diamond City Radio can be a nice break from those stressful horror tracks that honestly can sometimes be a little too effective. Too stressful. However, it's the beautiful ambient themes that really take center stage here. They are listenable and soothing, yet they still occasionally hit you with a touch of dissonance or scratchiness, so you're reminded of the desolate reality of the world you're exploring. It seems that Xur will be tackling the Elder Scrolls 6 soundtrack, and I can't wait to hear it. Overall, in spite of its many notable flaws, Fallout 4 may just be my favorite game of all time. It's not a perfect game, and giving it a 9 out of 10 still feels overly generous considering its many issues. But what Fallout 4 does well, it does exceedingly well. I don't remember the last time I was this engrossed in a fictional world. After I retired my character and his pals at Kingsport Lighthouse, it was hard for me to say goodbye. I felt that odd homesickness that you feel when it's time to say goodbye to a game world that you've loved exploring. It's over. It's done. There's nothing left to do. I suppose I could give Fallout 76 or Starfield a try. Thanks for listening to the Retro Mo podcast. As always, I do my best to keep all of my content spoiler-free and rated E for everyone. If you find this podcast enjoyable or helpful, tell a friend and consider giving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. If you have questions or comments, you can send an email to retromopodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Godspeed.